Have you ever wanted to get involved in real estate development but didn't know where to begin? Do you think real estate development is only for the large hedge funds or major corporations, the big guys? Or have you done some development in the past and are looking to scale up? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to the W.I.R.E.D Wealth and Real Estate Development Podcast. I am your host, Nick Smith. Get ready to have your mind blown and rewired as we discuss all aspects of creating wealth and real estate development. Good day, all. Good day, all. Welcome to episode number 2 of the W.I.R.E.D Podcast, Wealth and Real Estate Development. I am your host, Nicholas Smith, and I have a special guest with me today. It is none other than Miss Nancy Frigo. Nancy Frigo is a native of Calumet City, Illinois, but has been in Northwest Indiana forever. We'll say forever now. So she is completely a Hoosier. Nancy's also a newlywed. She has been in the real estate industry for over 30 years. She's been a mentor of mine and a friend throughout the years. So welcome, Nancy.
Hi, everybody.
All righty. So as we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself, your childhood. What was it like growing up in the Frigo household?
Actually, I grew up in the Swiderski household. That was another name. And
Say that again?
Swiderski, Polish. Believe it or not,
Okay.
I'm Polish. Anyway, my father was a police officer back in the day, and my mother was a homemaker. I was the baby. And I had all older brothers. And so you learn really quick how to survive that. Anyway, but no, growing up was really cool. We really didn't have much, but we had love. And I did end up going to school in Dalton, Illinois for high school. And that was a really great experience too, because I learned a lot about diversity and life. I took a work program when I was a junior in high school. And so I go to school, then I go to work in the afternoon, and that's taught me a lot of life lessons. So I really got a lot of those work programs back in the day. And then just off them running, I moved out of the house when I was 18, bought a house and down in Lowell, Indiana, because I could afford it.
Curious, what were the interest rates when you bought your house?
17%. It was
17%.
Yeah, back in 1984, they were 17%. So when I saw this 2%, or I see 5 or 6 or 7, it's a number. You got to work. You just got to go to work. And, it's one of the basic entities, or one of the basic things to survival in life is you got to have a roof over your head. So that's what we did. That's what I did. And so I was down in Lowell for a long time. And so here I am. So.
Awesome. And you guys, I actually attended Nancy's reception recently, her wedding reception. Again, as I stated, she's a newlywed, and Nancy's mother was the life of the party. She was literally in a motorized wheelchair, riding around, getting people to get on the dance floor. So it was an experience to see, for sure. So how did you work your way into the real estate industry?
Back in the day, we didn't have computers. I mean, I bought my house in 1984. That'll just tell you, how long ago that was. And I took business.
By the way.
I took business in college, and I did take a computer class, but it was not like what you see now. I mean, it was the punch cards and all that, and it wasn't anything like that. My brother did go to school though for this new thing called what's it called? The wires, and anyway, so he got into that, but what happened was I was doing a lot. I mean, I was married. I got married young, had 2 young children, and I was a fitness instructor back in the day. I became one of the first APA fitness trainers in Northwest Indiana. And so doing that and a lot of different things, and doing my little entrepreneurship, little things with, crafts and you name it, and watching kids and whatever it is to pay the bills. And then I was working with my cousin's catering business, going to think of it, over at Patrick Marina. And we were doing a fish fry on Friday nights, and some really great people there that, I saw they had a lot of money, to be honest with you. They had a lot of those nice boats out there and everything. And they said to me, Nancy, you would make a perfect real estate agent. You have the personality. And I was a kid, I was in my young 20s, and I'm like, really? You think so? They're like, yep. So, and then I got home that day and I opened up the phone book, this thing called the phone book, Have you ever seen one of those before, Mike?
I have seen phone books. My dad used to actually still use them before he passed.
So they had this thing called the phone book, and I opened my finger up and it fell on McCallie School of Real Estate. And I said, okay. So I called there the next day, and then I scheduled the class. And then I went to the class, but I wasn't really sure because I had a really good opportunity to head up and run a big health club out here. And so I was sitting there talking to this gentleman called Tom Carlin, and he was awesome. He just recently passed away. God bless Tom. And Tom said to me, Nancy, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And we did this goal strategy thing and all that. And I saw myself. I said, you know what? I could do this real estate thing. I took a course called Sweat Hogs, which was intense. I know nowadays they got a lot of different programs and all that. Back in the day, they didn't. And we had to do cold calling, and we would go and we had to get one listing a week for a house. And so I did that, and then I hit it. I just hit the ground running, and I knew that that was what I needed to do and be, and made it happen. And a few years later, I went and opened up my own franchise. I opened up a Center 21. Yeah, and became a builder and developer, and that's kind of how it all rolls. So, because real estate leads you into so many different opportunities too, if you
Right.
open your eyes and take a look. So
Right.
that's
Right.
what happened.
Good deal. Good deal.
Mhm.
So with that background, most people, unless you're a second generation developer or contractor, straight out of high school or college, you end up being a developer. But most other people that don't have that background end up, starting in some other career and then working their way into development and general contracting. So how did you land your first development as a
Oh,
developer?
well, like I said, opportunities like a bus. I hopped on that one for sure. And so what happened? Okay, I always tell everybody, and I use all these corny things. I mean, I'm at that age now where I don't care. But I mean, I'm just like you guys. When the phone rings, it's money calling you. Pick the phone up, okay? And I've always said that. Anyway, so the phone rang. I was at the office, and I was on this thing called floor duty. And quite frankly, the manager that I was working with at that time, she went to go get her hair done. She told me, it's yours. I'm like, okay, whatever comes in. So, and I was green. And so the phone rang, and it was a gentleman that said that, hey, I had heard that I wanted to talk to an agent because, I heard that, the market's pretty hot in the area that I was working at the time in Low. And I was thinking about doing some like-kind property investments at that time. And quite frankly, I didn't even know what he was talking about with like-kind. So I looked it up in the dictionary.
And for those that don't know, Lowell, Indiana is South Lake County, Indiana. Lake County is the second largest county in the state of Indiana. Lowell is South Lake County.
And actually, Lowell is 1/3 of Lake County.
It's huge.
It's huge. It goes from the border of Illinois all the way, way over, east past I-65. So a lot of people don't realize that. Anyway, so what happened was, so then I met up with them, and so I had to reinvest this money into like-kind properties. And when I was looking all around, and then an opportunity came along where we were talking about building homes. And so I was talking to several contractors and such. And at that time, this was back in the 90s, I think it was, and late 90s. And I couldn't find decent people that would even take me serious. I mean, my gosh, I was young. I was, I don't know, 30 something maybe, or late 20s, 30s, and early 30s. And it was kind of ridiculous. And then so the gentleman said to me, Nancy, you're smart. You can learn anything. Why don't you become a general contractor? And I'm like, okay. So I went and took the test. I did that. And then it kind of went from there. I purchased some lots, and then I worked with a developer that had the project, and then I started getting into developments with a lot of these really great mentors of mine. And so I took a lot of the farmland, and I created small little subdivisions, and I did it. I mean, I worked with the engineers, I worked with the surveyors, you name it, going to the county or going to the town meetings and things like that. And I pretty much got just thrown out there to do it. And there was no real structured programs of anything at that time, because there just wasn't. I mean, if we wanted to research anything, we had to go to the library. They invented cell phones at the time, to where I remember I purchased those walkie-talkie phones. So anybody that has in Northwest Indiana a phone with the first three numbers, you call them at 746. Those were the first numbers that they created for that. And what we had was,
Wow.
as a contractor or developer, I purchased a whole bunch of them because, of course, then I had a company called Destiny Developments, and that's what, that was my company, and I had a bunch of people that worked for us, so they all had a phone. Actually, some of the people that I still know today still have that same phone number, from a million years ago. But yeah, and it just kind of happened, but I loved it. I loved it. I loved seeing a piece of property that had nothing there, and then all these homes and a park, or the kids, and seeing everybody live their life. I mean, I cannot tell you how many graduation parties or weddings or this, that, you get invited to. I love everybody, but it's hard, but I was able to build my parents a house for cost, and that was really cool. My dad always wanted to be Nancy. Oh, he wanted a White House, so I built him a beautiful White House. Back in that day, it was what Nancy and Ronald Reagan were the president or whatever. I don't remember. Anyway, he was, and so I built him his White House, and he loved it, and that was really a nice goal too for me to achieve, to do that for my parents. So yeah.
I always tell people it takes a certain kind of individual to be a developer, because you have to see things differently than everybody else sees them. When you ride past a piece of dirt and if nothing kind of jumps out at you, it's not to say that development isn't for you, but might not be the path for you. But if something speaks to you, you walk through dilapidated properties, buildings, land that is underserved, and you kind of, get this itch, like something should go there. Those are the type of mindsets. That's the wiring. You have to have a specific type of wiring to be a developer. And, it's not for everybody, but, we definitely want to help everybody that has some interest in it be able to see the future in it and what can be done as a developer. So you start with that first development and you get that going. How long did that development take to kind of get up and going and get everything entitled and subdivided and
Well,
everything?
it takes a little bit to get things rolling. It depends on what municipality you're working with and how they're structured too.
Okay.
So back in the day, there was not a lot of structure, but we made it happen. And so, you have to, I don't know, I always look at, okay, who's my end user? What's the highest and best use for any property? And what's our price point? Because, when I was doing a lot of residential real estate back in the day, and people were developing land and putting houses in, and things were not happening. I'm like, guys, I mean, when you took on this project, did your real estate agent tell you what was selling in the market? You know what I'm saying? I mean, a lot of people were building what I call it Taj Mahals, or like things that maybe didn't conform to what the market was absorbing at that time.
Right.
So there's no right or wrong way as far as what you'd love to do and all that other stuff. But if you build something that's not going to sell in this market, you're not going to fly. You're not going to, earn a living on that, And so the key is to really do your homework. I call it recon. I always tell you that too. I do my recon and everything, because you've got to see what you're up against, and you have to find out where your utilities are at. I mean, I always say, whoever, has the water and sewer is the king and queen of the lands, because, you got to find out where the water and that sewer source is at, and how to bring the power, to the project too.
Right.
It's huge.
Yeah, that is definitely huge. And, I'm approaching that and running into that on projects I'm working on right now. So it's definitely key. So got that project completed. What challenges because I remember you telling me before that at one point in time, you were only one of two female general contractors licensed in Lake County. So what challenges came with that? Because you were kind of a trailblazer in a certain aspect, but I'm sure some challenges came with that.
It was an experience. I've experienced, I don't know, you know what? I grew up in a different environment, I guess, so that kind of toughened me up a little bit for certain things. I grew up with mostly all boys anyway, my family, so everybody was either wrestling or hanging out, whatever. But then being in the multiracial neighborhoods that I grew up in too, because my father being a police officer and such, and where my whole family was from South Chicago area in Chicago. So I learned a lot about that, but then when I was out on the field and not getting a lot of the respect that, most people, I mean, it was appalling actually, some of the things that would happen back in the day. Because nowadays I'm so proud of this generation right now, because they're not like, a lot of them are not like that, how it was back then. They didn't show a lot of respect to women and whatever. I mean, that is what it is. Nowadays you can't get away with the stuff that a lot of them got away with, and it was very appalling. And there is still things like that today. I shouldn't say there isn't, because there is, but I mean, you just got to keep going and just keep out, just keep going forward and don't look back, and just constantly just chip away at things. And maybe one day, my daughter told me that line was, "Oh, bless your heart," you just keep going forward. But I didn't let it bother me, because I know who I am and I know what I'm about. And I was doing the right things. I would never hurt anybody or do anything ill, or paid my bills. I made sure my subs got paid, and I figured out how to make things work. And then they started gaining respect for me. I mean, a lot of time, and then that's like the constant, honestly, you got to prove yourself, prove yourself. Well, you know what? Sometimes I guess you do have to prove yourself. You really, you just got to do it. I mean, complete your circles and make things happen. That's an interesting story with that, because the other lady, actually right now, her and I are doing a lot of work together, and you know her.
Okay.
And so it's funny because here we are, 30 years later, 25 years later, doing things still. And it's been great, so.
Awesome. Awesome. So that's back in the 90s. You got going as a real estate agent and also developer, but I know a grand time came around that 2007, 2008 period. And I'm always curious and interested to talk with people that actually went through that period and actually survived that period. What was that time frame like for you, and how were you able to make it through? Because you had some other things going on close around that time period as well.
Yeah, my daughter calls me the S curve, because you got to constantly recreate your life a lot of times, and depending on who you are and what you're in and about. And that's just who I am. I don't sit still, And so what
That
happened?
is 100% true. She never sits
No,
still.
no. But so now you know why back in the day when I was in my teens and my 20-year-old stage, I was a kick butt, what do you call aerobics instructor and all that fun, happy stuff. But
Makes 100% sense right now. Makes a lot of sense.
so things come full circle. And so what happened was, I was up for renewing my Century 21 franchise, and, I still was doing building and things like that. And I also did a restaurant. I opened up the first cyber cafe actually in Northwest Indiana back in the day too. And that
Where
was a
was
lot of
that?
fun. It was right next to it was next to the building that I had where the real estate office was at. And what happened was it was just a demolished, like a terrible building that was falling apart. And I got stuck with the building. And so I went and I remodeled the entire thing. I took it down to the studs and I redid it, and I brought everything in from IKEA, and I made a cyber cafe. That's when the computers really took off, and that was pretty cool, So I let all the realtors in Northwest Indiana or the builders bring their clients there and give them free coffee, and then they buy them lunch and stuff like that, and they use the computers. Yeah, a lot of people didn't have laptops weren't invented. So if you didn't have an office in South County, you really had nowhere to go. So that was kind of a hub for a lot of the agents, for those agents that are out there. You remember that place? It was called the Last Drop Cafe. And so I landed up so what happened was my son it was terrible. He was 17 and he was killed on the way to school, and a speeding driver killed him. And so I sold everything and I do what they tell people not to do. I sold everything and I was done. I regrouped on life. I went surfing a little while for, just to kind of relax. And then I came back, into Northwest Indiana. And so I parked my license with a brokerage. It was good friends of mine. And then I was offered a position to head up their new construction and division. And so that was kind of my niche anyway. And so I landed up going all over the place and meeting, because they had 17 offices at that time. And I would go all the way out to Shorewood, Illinois, down to Bourbonnais, Illinois, all the way out to Valparaiso, towards Michigan City and those areas. So I got a really good feel of what was going on in the vibe back then when everybody was crashing. It was terrible. It was very sad. I had a lot of friends that lost everything. It was survival mode for a lot of people. So what I did was created a back to basic program. And so what we did, and you'll see some of it nowadays where people do that, this is the basic plan, the silver, the gold. And so what we did is I recruited a lot of these developers and a lot of these builders into a lot of these different programs. And I put this together. And so we were able to kind of bond everybody together a little bit, because a lot of people didn't have money for marketing and things like that.
Mhm.
And then let me tell you something, when it came to the developments, it was hardcore brutal. I mean, a lot of these banks were just swiping everything away from all these developers.
Wow.
And it was a survival mode. And so what we had was a lot of receiverships, like when the bank called the note on the properties, they go through a lot of changes, and so then they regrouped on it. But then what happened was we had a time there where, we lost a lot of really good builders. We really did, in both states, because we're right there. We're the border of Northwest Indiana, Illinois, Indiana. And so what we found, though, that a lot of prices were a little overinflated in the Illinois side. So a lot of builders in the Indiana side were a little bit more stronger, and then, yeah, it just was a regroup time. So there was a project, I got a phone call from Tom Fleming, and he had a development called Ellendale. And at that time, like I said, computers were starting to get popular and things like that. And so I took on that project. And so what I did is I went through and I analyzed, what the pricing was, saw what the market was doing. I created his Ellendale website. I walked that entire subdivision 3 times and the existing homes that are there. And it's a beautiful, beautiful neighborhood. And got everybody's, if they had an email, I created the Ellendale cookbook.
Wow.
Because what we did is we went back to basics. Okay. And you couldn't Google things at the time. Then everybody kind of got together. And one thing in neighborhoods, especially that are existing, and then half of them isn't finished yet, you want to know who they know so that, get the word out that, hey, it's a great place to live, and regroup on that. And so we slashed the prices for a while there and regrouped on the size of lots and things like that with them. And a lot of the builders were able to sustain and make it happen. And then we brought some other builders in. A lot of times, well, a lot of the developments, actually, a lot of those production builders came in too and purchased a lot of things all over Northwest Indiana too. And like I worked with D.R. Horton at the time too. And so they went around and picked up all the sporadic lots, but we didn't have a lot of banks giving money for new developments at that time. Okay. Until the market started changing a little bit more. And so, you got to follow the money. You got to figure out, okay, so then if you find a piece of ground and it's needed, we got to make sure we find the banks that will cooperate and work with the people. So it was a restructuring, and it gave everybody it was a hard lesson for a lot of people. A lot of people were overextended, some weren't. So yeah, but yeah, I don't look back. Like I said, I get up every morning, if I have a bad day, okay, well, tomorrow, if I wake up tomorrow, it's a good day. So I don't look at things like most people, like some people, I should say, where I don't dwell in the past. I can't. It's just not me, and yeah, so that's what happened. And I don't know. So then I just started working all over the place, but yeah, it just happens that way. And met you, so hey.
Definitely. That 2008 period, 2008 to kind of 2011, 2012 was interesting for me personally because I literally just graduated college in 2008. So I didn't know anything about anything. I knew some of what was going on just by watching the news, and I kind of taken an interest in the stock market at that time. But I didn't know what was going on. People foreclosing and things like that. I didn't really understand what a foreclosure was because in college you get a lot of theoretical knowledge, but they don't teach you a lot of practical stuff.
No.
So I didn't know what foreclosure was. I didn't know the basics of how mortgages worked. I didn't know about financing of real estate and all that stuff. I've come to learn that in years after college, but I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. That's what I tell people. I wasn't able to somewhat take advantage of that period because I just didn't know. I didn't know what was happening during that time. But given that period and compared to where we are right now, you hear so much in the news and various media outlets. A lot of people think that our economy is in some turmoil right now, and I see some validity in that. But given kind of where we are and your experience, what concerns or where do you think we are in the real estate market cycle right now? Where do you think we're headed? Do you see some challenges coming ahead? I know none of us have a genie, none of us have a crystal ball, but just based on your experience, where do you think we are in the market right now?
Well, as far as we goes, are we talking about Northwest Indiana or as a nation?
As a nation, I say both, as a
Okay.
nation and here in Northwest Indiana.
Because recently, actually, and you were with me, we attended a amazing convention in Chicago, which is just north of us.
Right.
And we met brokers from the East and the West Coast and North and South, and even some from out of the country. And so that was a valid question. Even some people were talking about too, with the marketplace, where we at, and now that was commercial agents, but some of those commercial agents were really heavily into developments. Right. And, it kind of really depended on each area as far as what was going on within their governmental system. Really think about it. Remember some of those brokers we met, and then it depends on how strong the state was at. Each state is different. Right. And I would say every head is its own world. Well, every state is its own world because, yes, we have our national budget, but we also have the state budgets. And so then we were able to see on the graphs that were in front of us, the triangle. Okay. Do you remember the triangle? Mm-hmm. And they were talking about the growth pattern of what's happening and where the strong units were at. And it really is the Midwest. Yeah. The Midwest is killing it. I mean, and if you look at some of the Midwest states, some of them, not all, but they are stable. I mean, look at Tennessee. Look at, Indiana. Well, Indiana, I mean, here we go. Indiana, where we're at, 11 out of the 12 months last year, we had the most building permits from the surrounding states.
Yeah.
So we beat all the surrounding states for building permits. So it really depends on, the state's, validity of, how strong they are. Okay. That's one avenue to look at. So when you're looking at putting your dollar somewhere, you got to look at the whole package. When I assess different programs or different things, I always look first to see how the town or the city is operating. Are they operating in the black or the red? Okay, because financially, are they stable? What is needed there, and what haven't they been able to accomplish to get to that next step? So we had some mixed reviews from the East and the West Coast. Some of the West Coast people, they said things are great, but as far as the residential market, it was kind of variable, with a lot of the different areas because of the taxing bodies and things like that. But the thing that people have to remember is, what is our commonality between all of us? We all have to sustain life. So food, water, shelter, right? And so then you look at, well, what state has a little bit more opportunity for that to happen and make people actually have a good way of life too. So yeah, it was good and bad, to hear some. The economist that was there, I will tell you, we all cried, because the world, it was bad that night. I think everybody was so disappointed.
He did not give a very good outlook of
No.
where our economy is
No.
as a nation at all. It was bad.
Right. But here's the thing. We're the United States of America. And you know what, man, we make things happen. When somebody tells us no, we're like, yeah, no, thanks. I mean, we don't take no as an answer. I mean, we have to think like a child. I'm sorry, but you know what? The best salespeople in the world are my grandson's age, 4 and 2. Why? 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 Can I have this? Why? When you say no, they're not going to accept that. So let's go back to basics and say, no, we're not going to accept that. Let's make this happen. Why? Think about it. When a little kid like that wants something, they're going to tell you how many times. They don't quit. So we're not quitters. We don't throw it away. And so let's just keep recycling, and recycle what we can do positively to get things going, and our market share. Oh my goodness. I mean, we have so much great opportunity being the center of the country. We have every avenue. We have the port over there that goes out to the world in Lake Michigan. We got the trains, we got the rail, we got the highways, so we're in a really good location. We have the new metro train, we have the new commuter rail coming in,
right.
The Westlake Corridor, as well as the double track. So we have a lot of great opportunities. Plus the state of Indiana as a whole is really paying attention to us now in Northwest Indiana. And we're seeing a lot more funding coming up here from what's going down in our capital. So I'm excited actually for our region here, because I've seen it when it was bare land and a lot of just distraught properties, and I'm totally pumped up for our economic development programs that are going on all over, between Hammond, East Chicago, Gary. We've had some great success. I mean, how about it, Nick? Talk about the Fitzsimmons project. Wow.
Definitely. The Fitzsimmons project in East Chicago, Indiana, first condo complex in East Chicago, Indiana's history.
New construction.
Literally brand new, built from the ground up, 7 residential condos, 3 commercial condos on the first floor. And those condos are almost sold out right now. I think there's only 1 left. And it was an interesting project, and they're doing projects like that throughout the city. Right now, they got a building right next to it where they'll be doing something similar on a smaller scale, but repurposing an existing building. So one thing about housing, and a lot of your older cities are starting to see that, is that you have to have a diverse type of housing available for people. I think kind of gone are the days where everybody wants the single family home. Some people want a condo. Some people wouldn't mind having a townhouse. Some people wouldn't even mind having a co-op, things like that. So you have to have some optionality for people. You have to have some diverse choices.
Exactly.
That's what people are looking for, choices.
Well, I will tell you this morning, I was with another agent from another one of our offices, and working on a res Marshall project. And excuse me, I looked around, and I was driving around Valparaiso, Indiana. I got to tell you, I know the university's there and all that, but they got that going on.
Yeah.
Valparaiso, I was so impressed today, because I looked around, I'm thinking, a lot of our other communities can be like this,
Yeah.
having the residential, having all the
The
different
downtown is
areas.
dry.
I was in an area where they had the commercial units on the bottom and a,
Mhm.
one unit apartment up on the top. And I'm thinking to myself, these kind of products go perfect in any city, any city. And I know that a lot of people are trying to get away from using gasoline and all that other stuff. So why not make pods, or why not put areas like that in some of these other areas where people can walk to the local grocer and go walk to the local things around there, doing more resmercial. We need more resmercial projects in our area, and especially in the areas where we're redeveloping a lot of things like that. And one of the things I did is I travel around a lot. I've done that forever actually. I travel all over the place, all over the United States, to get ideas of what would work well. And that's why when I got to learn about Nashville, what they did and what they did down in Chattanooga, it reminded me so much of exactly what we have going on here in our county and in Porter County, the north part of it. And what can be done, even with the areas that are trashed. We have a lot of these areas that have bad soils and all this other stuff. I've watched these cities go in there and repurpose all that land, and now they're thriving. I was just down in Chattanooga last week and driving past some of those communities that in a million years you'd never think that that would ever be there, but it's
Right.
there. It's there, and there's a need for it, and we need more of that. So, but yeah, that's what we do here. So,
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Nance, I'm not going to keep you too much longer. I told you I would keep it short. I won't get too personal. Definitely.
well, my
But
name is Nancy Frigo. Well, it's actually Nancy Spetanoff. I married Joe Spetanoff. He's awesome.
yes, that is,
Yep.
that he definitely is. I can attest to that. But if somebody, some parting words of advice, if somebody had an interest to get into real estate development, whether it was single family homes or maybe somebody sees a dilapidated building like I just bought in East Chicago
Yeah, I love
and, and wants to repurpose it, what would be kind of some words of advice that you would give somebody that wants to get into the real estate development space?
Hmm. Don't take no for an answer. Have an open mind about things. Use some common sense. 2 words, common sense. If it makes sense, if it doesn't make sense, don't do it. Make sure that you have a clear cut goal of what you're going to be doing, what you want to set out to do, and search out sources for income, for it, and as far as utilizing banks or things like that, see if there's any funds available from the municipalities. Okay, and then do your recon on it and make sure that the soil is good if you're going into something with just soil, or if you have any kind of information like that about it, and get yourself surround yourself with smart, good people that understand what you need to do. There's a lot of amazing people out there that will help you, and it's not going to cost you anything. I mean, sometimes people charge for things, but surround yourself with the best people that you can find to help you with that. And be careful and be wary, okay, as far as other things too. Especially when you go into partnerships with people, for developments like that, check out how they treat their family. I mean, and then just be smart about it. Yeah, and take a chance. You know what? Life's too short. Get out there and live it.
That is 100% true. Thank you for those words. I hope my listeners take heed to those words of advice. Some people and relationships, I believe, are divinely connected, and that's how I feel about Nancy. One interesting fact, she mentioned her 2 grandchildren.
Three.
It is
Three.
she has 3
The
grandchildren,
twins and the
but she has 2 little ones, and they were running around her
yeah.
reception as well. So they had just as good a time, I think, as her mother did.
Oh yeah.
But her 2 twins, her twin grandsons, her youngest grandsons, were born on November 20th of 2020, and my father made his heavenly transition on November 20th, 2020. So as her twin grandchildren were coming, my dad was making his exit. So say what you want, but some things are definitely divinely put together. And I know our connection, our friendship and relationship was divinely put together for sure, for sure.
I'm so proud of you, Nick.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. And she's a part of that circle of mine. And I definitely agree with her wholeheartedly. You have to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, more knowledgeable than you, and are willing to share what they learn. So again, thank you all for listening. This is another episode of W.I.R.E.D Podcast. Let's go out and build some wealth in real estate development. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please share this content with someone else who would benefit from it. I'm looking forward to having you with me on the next episode. Now go out and create some wealth and real estate development.